Where's the money I've been sending you every month? David and Sarah look emaciated. James, my husband, who had just returned from an overseas assignment, yelled at me as soon as he got home. What do you mean? I was shocked and stared at James, not understanding what he was talking about. I've been saving the money. Why are David and Sarah emaciated? Don't play dumb. You borrowed money from David, right? He contacted me saying they can't afford proper meals. The photos he sent showed both of them terribly thin. What are you talking about? I hadn't borrowed any money from David. They were fine just a few months ago. It's unlikely for them to become so thin so suddenly. James completely believed David's words and treated me as the bad person. I couldn't let myself or James be manipulated by David any longer. That's the only thing I couldn't tolerate. I had to expose David and Sarah's wrongdoing. I'm Amanda, 61 years old. I work part-time at a local bakery. I've been living alone for the last few years. James, my husband, was assigned overseas. He's now over 60 and works for a construction company, still working hard as a site supervisor. For the past few years, he's been guiding and assisting locals in developing countries and building large commercial facilities. Although I was worried about his first overseas assignment, he seems to enjoy it, getting along well with the cheerful locals. James sends me $2,000 every month for living expenses, so I've been living comfortably on my own. We have a son, David, who also works for a construction company like James. He married Sarah 3 years ago and lives in an apartment nearby. Neighbors say it's nice to have a son close by, but that's not really the case. Since getting married, he hardly ever visits. David left home during his rebellious years, and we haven't been in much contact since. I hoped things would change once he got married and moved nearby, but they didn't. However, it's common to hear that boys don't keep in touch much, so I resigned myself to it. Then one day, David and Sarah suddenly came to my house. We have a favor to ask. What's going on? Well, we need to borrow some money. Money? Why? I raised my voice, fearing the worst, like debt. David and Sarah looked apologetic and shrugged. We're thinking of starting infertility treatments. Infertility treatments? Yeah, it's been 3 years since we got married and we haven't had a child yet. We thought it's time to consider it. That's true. But Sarah, you're still in your 20s. Isn't it too early to worry? Sarah responded anxiously.
It's physically challenging if it's too late, and just because we start treatments doesn't mean we'll have a child right away.
That's a good point. I've heard it can take years. I had no idea they were seriously struggling with this. The thing is, infertility treatments are quite expensive. Sarah works at a grocery store, but honestly, it's tough. I had heard about infertility treatments on TV. It's a difficult journey that requires a lot of time and money, as I heard from those who've been through it. I wanted to see my grandchild and help my son David if he was in trouble. So I nodded in agreement to David and Sarah's request. I understand. I'll support you both as much as I can. But how much do you need? Actually, we need about $2,500 a month. $2,500 a month? It was not a small amount for me. It was more than what James sends me every month. However, with my savings and part-time job, it wasn't an impossible amount. We'll definitely pay you back, please. I've always had a soft spot for David's requests. David was finally reaching out to me. Being there for him is what a parent does. All right, I'll deposit it into your bank account each month, okay, David? That would help a lot. Thanks, Mom.
Thank you, Amanda.
David and Sarah left looking happy. Upon reflection, I had one question. Was $2,500 a month really necessary for infertility treatments? Yet, considering additional expenses like diet and medical visits, I thought it might be necessary. 6 months later, the monthly payment of $2,500 to David were not easy. While I could manage with James's remittances and my part-time income, I had to be more frugal than before. So I went shopping at a discount grocery store a bit far from home. On my way back, passing a casino, I spotted two familiar faces. David and Sarah? David and Sarah were entering that casino. Could it be a mistake? Curious, I decided to follow them. I went inside and looked for them. The place was crowded, and just as I was about to give up, I spotted David exiting the restroom. I followed them from a distance unnoticed. David and Sarah were excitedly discussing something. They sat at a table and started playing. There was David, a side I had never seen before. The game ended quick. David and Sarah seemed upset, probably having lost. I doubted whether they were really undergoing infertility treatments. They should be using their money for treatment, not gambling. They should have managed their finances before borrowing from me. Wanting to confront them, I approached as they left the casino. David, Sarah, can we talk for a moment? What, Mom? They turned around, surprised, their faces strained. What's this? You have money to gamble? Well, we just came to relax a bit. Relax? You seemed quite experienced, though. Oh, I used to come here with friends during college. College, huh? The more I heard, the more suspicious it seemed. So you don't usually gamble? No, we're just stressed, thinking about infertility treatments. That must be tough. But you seem quite knowledgeable. Is it really your first time since college? David began to fidget irritably under my questioning. Are you doubting me? It's not that, but it's shocking to see you coming out of a casino when you said you couldn't afford treatments. I haven't heard much about the treatment either. Oh, you're so annoying. David scratched his head and sighed exaggeratedly. Shut up, all that infertility treatment talk was a lie. So, all the money so far went to gambling? Obviously. If we hit it big, we'll be billionaires. It's stupid not to try such a dream. David and Sarah showed no remorse for deceiving me, laughing mockingly. I felt betrayed after worrying so much for David. I was ready to do anything for him, but he exploited my feelings. Well then, you won't be needing any more money from me. What are you talking about? If you're not undergoing treatments, you don't need it, right? Well, don't expect a penny from us when we become billionaires. David crossed his arms and looked down on me. Sarah continued with a smug smile.
By the way, we've already spent all the money you gave us, so there's none left. We can't pay it back.
Too bad for you. David and Sarah said mockingly, then turned their backs and left without another word. I was speechless with astonishment. Despite having transferred about $10,000 to them over the past few months, this was their attitude. If I let them continue their reckless behavior, it would lead to irreparable consequences. That's why I decided to stop sending money to David. 2 months later, James was returning home temporarily. I prepared his favorite soup and pasta, waiting for him. As soon as he arrived, James burst out. Where's the money I've been sending you every month? David and Sarah looked malnutritioned. What do you mean? I was stunned and stared at James, not understanding what he was talking about. I've been saving the money. Why are David and Sarah malnutritioned? Don't play dumb. You borrowed money from David, right? He contacted me, saying they can't afford proper meals. The photos he sent showed both of them terribly thin. What are you talking about? I can't believe you. Aren't you ashamed as a parent? I've been sending enough money so you wouldn't have financial troubles, and yet you're borrowing money from our son. What are you doing? James was furious, blaming me for everything. However, I had never borrowed money from David. It was all a lie. I was shocked that James completely believed David's words and didn't trust me. But I couldn't let David and Sarah's lies continue. I decided to reveal everything to James. James, I understand you want to believe in David, but can you look at this? Bank statements, what about them? This is the money you've been sending me every month. What? You have plenty of money. James looked puzzled as he examined the statement. That's right, I'm not struggling for money, and look here. Did you send money to David? Yes, until recently I was sending David $2,500 every month. That much? Were you okay with your living expenses? Relieved that James had calmed down, I continued. I managed with my part-time job and savings. I had saved quite a bit. Looking at the remaining balance, he could see I hadn't wasted money. Then why give David money? He said they wanted to start infertility treatments. Infertility treatments? Yes, they've been married for 3 years without a child, so they asked for money for treatments. That's why I lent money to them. James was surprised, having not heard about the treatments. David and Sarah claimed to my husband that they didn't have enough money to live because of me. So why did you stop the payments? It was all a lie. They weren't going to the clinic. Then where did the money go? This is it. The casino they went to happened to be on TV. It showed people mingling. You don't mean they used the money for gambling? They lied to try and get money from me too? James stared in disbelief at the TV. That's when it happened. Hey, isn't that David and Sarah? Oh my gosh, it is. I never thought they would ever go back. David and Sarah appeared on the screen. I thought they would restrain themselves after I stopped the payments, but they couldn't quit gambling. Unbelievable. The photos they sent me showed them looking so thin. They haven't changed at all. Nowadays, you can edit photos with apps, you know. James, realizing he had been deceived, hung his head in dismay. Maybe his return home was also for David and Sarah's sake. After a moment of shock, James looked up, determined. Unacceptable. I need to have a serious talk with them. Saying that, he headed for the door. Where are you going? To David's house, of course. I'm going to confront them. In a rage, James was about to leave for David's house, but I quickly stopped him. It's pointless to go now. Why? They're at the casino and won't be back until evening. Plus, if you're going, you need to be prepared. I smiled at James. It was time to prepare something special that I had kept hidden until now. In the evening, when we thought David and Sarah would be home by now, James and I headed to David's house. When James rang the doorbell, David and Sarah appeared, looking flustered. What? Why's Dad here? Aren't you supposed to be overseas? I heard you two were in trouble, so I came back. You both seem quite well, though. Contrary to the photos James had shown me, David and Sarah looked perfectly healthy but strained. Struggling for food and money, right? Are you okay now? Yeah, some colleagues at my work have been helping us out. I see. You've been lending money to Mom, right? How much did you lend her? Well, that's... Pressed by James, David glanced at me. He scratched his head and said, That's right, Mom owes me over $10,000. And she hasn't paid back a cent. What do you think, Dad? Terrible, right? Facing David's resolve to stick to his lies, I let go of any remaining affection. That's awful. Do you have any proof? No proof. I lent it to her because she's family, but she's not paying it back. David's fake tears were met with Sarah's concurrence.
We're struggling too, so we told her we couldn't lend her more money. She got angry, saying we're family but won't help.
Is that true, Amanda? I did lend money, but I never borrowed any. Assertively denying their claims, David and Sarah's protest grew louder. Lies! She's deceiving you, Dad.
Don't believe Amanda.
James looked at them coldly, clearly fed up. I had no time for their charade. To end this, I took out the evidence from my bag. Look at this, my bank statements and the promissory notes I had them write when lending money. That's a lie. David stammered, trying to grab the evidence from me, but I handed it all to James. In fact, I showed them all at home, but James reacts as if he's seeing them for the first time. What's this? You borrowed money from Mom? That's not what I heard. There's a reason for that. What's the reason? David stiffened as James's voice grew colder. James, always strict, must have instilled fear in him. Sweating profusely, David struggled for words. It was for gambling money, right? What are you talking about, Mom? That's ridiculous. Really? But you were on TV today. What? I showed them photos from my phone. I recorded a snippet of the show on my phone. David and Sarah appeared several times, wearing the same clothes as they were right now. Their faces turned pale at the photos. That must be someone else who looks similar. This isn't proof.
You can't tell if it's us from that.
Ignoring their denial, I presented several more photos. The photos contained pictures of him going in and out of the casino. Actually, I hired a detective to follow you, David, Sarah. They found out you've been going to the casino several times a month. What's this? They were speechless at the photos and investigation report. Also, the lie about infertility treatments. You haven't visited any clinic for months. Got anything to say? Realizing there was no escape, David sighed and feigned nonchalance. I thought you'd be easy to deceive, Dad. What did you say? I laughed so hard when you called in panic because of my email. If I knew it was this easy, I should have asked for money from you from the start, Dad. David's mocking laughter made James clench his fists on his lap. Did you enjoy deceiving me and your mom? Oh, it was hilarious. If only Mom hadn't been so perceptive. We wanted to win more.
Really, we could have earned so much more.
David and Sarah showed no remorse. Stop mocking your parents. Do you even realize you're doing something wrong? What? Borrowing and lending money within the family is fine, isn't it? Don't sweat the small stuff. Borrowing money? You don't even repay what you owe. Shut up. It's natural for parents to financially support their children, right? Don't make a big deal out of it. David seemed to think it's okay to do anything because we're family. But reality isn't that forgiving. I decided to confront David with the harsh truth. Listen, even within a family, lying to borrow money can be considered fraud, you know. Fraud? Yes, you tricked me out of money. I'm consulting a lawyer, so you might hear from the court soon. The mention of court panicked David, so I pressed on. The lawyer says there's a potential for fraud charges because the promissory note says it's for infertility treatments, but you never went for any. Then let's sue. David stood up as James spoke calmly. Wait, sue your own son? Are you really that heartless? What? You swindled money from us? And you're saying that? I know what I did was wrong, but wait on suing, please. Then will you repay us? Silence fell over David. It seemed he lost at betting again today. I don't have any cash on hand right now. I'm really struggling for money. I know. The detective said you might be in debt. So you're in debt. Having a hard time repaying. That's why you can't pay us back anytime soon. I squeezed David's hand, feigning sympathy. How sad. We didn't realize you were suffering so much. Sorry. Yeah, as parents, we should have paid more attention. We need to guide you to the right path from now on. James gently patted David's back. Mom, Dad. David's voice was pitiful. We smiled at him. First, admit your wrongdoing and repay the money. That's important. Why does it have to be that way? Borrowing means repaying. Teaching you the right thing to do is our duty as parents. We resolved to provide no further financial support. It's time for them to manage on their own, like adults. Come on. David and Sarah were visibly disappointed. Eventually, they were ordered to repay all the money they borrowed from us. James, of course, also cut off all financial support for David to prevent further gambling addiction. It's our duty as parents to guide them onto the right path. David and Sarah started working longer hours to repay their debts. Too busy to even think about gambling, they were considerably thinner. Sarah wanted to divorce to escape the debt, but David refused. With no money to hire a lawyer, they couldn't even afford a divorce and continued their married life. Despite their apologies, I had no intention of forgiving them. Adults must pay for their mistakes. A few months later, James finished his overseas job and officially retired. Having working non-stop, James had many things he wanted to do in retirement and recently got into camping. We went camping by a lake the other day. We really enjoyed our time together for the first time in a long time. With the money James had sent me and his retirement funds, we weren't financially troubled. We planned to spend our remaining years leisurely, just the two of us.